All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pastrami Nation podcast. We lost Christian. I'm Kevin, and joining me today, Jason. How's it going, man?
Good. How you doing?
Good. And today, y'all, we have a very special guest. He's a comic book writer. Let's get Christian back in here real quick. And there's Christian.
What's up?
But we have a very special guest today. He's a comic book writer. He's written for everything, Marvel. He's written stuff like Spencer and Locke, Going to the Chapel, all kinds of good stuff. He's here. He's done Space Ghost, all kinds of great stuff. He's here today to talk about Captain Planet. David Pepose, welcome to the show, sir.
Hi. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited to catch up with you guys. And excited to talk all things comics with you tonight.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited. So let's just dive right into it, man. Captain Planet, I'd say one of the most iconic series from my childhood.
He's our hero.
He's our hero.
He's our hero, man. It's fantastic. You're writing the new Captain Planet series. Tell us a little bit about your take on the character. Sure. and what's how's everything going with it?
It's been such a fun book to work on. Captain Planet's actually been my white whale for about a decade. I pitched this book to just about every publisher in the industry.
Nice.
And so when Dynamite announced that they had picked up the publishing rights for Captain Planet at San Diego Comic-Con last year, I immediately emailed our publisher, Nick Barucci, and my editor, Joe Rymant, and I said, do you guys have somebody attached to this book? Because if not, it's got to be me.
Yeah,
and
of course.
For me, I think, Captain Planet has all the elements to be a blockbuster, and I've known that for 10 years. It's inherently multicultural and diverse in a way we haven't seen that organically since, giant-sized X-Men.
Right.
It's so timely in the way that it tackles environmental disaster, but also the human greed and apathy that fuels it. And then I think also pop culture has really caught up with it. This is the story of 5 ordinary people from around the world who are given 5 elemental rings, and they can use them to summon the mortal elemental demigod known as Captain Planet. And for me, I've always seen that as sort of X-Men meets Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Mm-hmm.
These international young people who are immediately on the back foot. They're immediately the underdog, but they've got these really cool, visually interesting kind of powers. And watching them kind of go on the run from a system that seeks to exploit them, that feels very timely in the year 2025.
Yes.
I would argue maybe more timely than I'm necessarily comfortable with. But this series has been so fun to work on. We're sort of doing kind of the big blockbuster action take on Captain Planet without shying away from any of the messages or in the spirit of the politics of the original. I know Captain Planet as a cartoon often gets a bad rap for being unsubtle. I'd argue that reality's gotten a lot less subtle in recent years. And so for me, it really wasn't that hard to kind of do a slightly more grounded take on Captain Planet, just something that feels like it could be in the world outside our window. Something that doesn't sort of test that suspension of disbelief, too hard. It's been such a treat to work on this book. I'm working with artist Amon Casalos, and he is doing such a sensational job. He's got a little bit of Gary Frank to him, a little bit of Steve Dillon, a little bit of Doug Mahnke, a little bit of Frank Quitely. You can kind of see all that DNA in his artwork. And so he really balances this larger than life action with this really evocative acting and expression work. And so I think you're going to be really blown away by this book. I've been so thrilled with how it's come together. And it's been in the works for a long time. And I'm so honored and grateful that this story is finally going to see the light of day.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're excited to check it out. And like I said, it was such a big part of my childhood growing up. Sure. What kind of, were there any challenges for you? I'm assuming, you've been a Captain Planet fan for a long time. What were some of the challenges to kind of modernize it a whole lot? Was there anything that you really had to to really kind of look back on and be like, this stuff needs to be modernized or whatever, but were there any real hurdles or anything that you jumped over to try to make it more modern than it used to be, if that makes sense?
I wouldn't call any of it a hurdle. And for me, it was, there are some challenges that are like daunting, and then there are some challenges that are like fun that you like
Right.
love digging into. And this was very much the latter for me.
Okay.
I've luckily I've had a lot of time to think about this, but also for me, I think that was the appeal of a project like this, is that Captain Planet, God love it, it was a product of its time. It debuted in 1990. Linka, who has the power of wind, when she debuted, she was from the Soviet Union, and so things have changed quite significantly,
slightly.
And for me, that was, I think, the joy of this project, is saying, okay, like we have these core elemental building blocks for it. We have these 5 main characters, or really 7 main characters when you include Captain Planet and Gaia. And it's okay, how would that look in the year 2025 versus the year 1990? And that was really kind of the guiding principle for all of this, was just figuring out new ways to either modernize everything, or figuring out ways to make these characters even more immediate to the various facets of the environmental conversation, or just finding ways to, I think, even push the envelope further in Ted Turner and Barbara Pyle's original vision, which was really to make this as diverse and inclusive as possible. And I think that's something that really speaks so strongly to me for a series like this. I grew up an X-Men fan. Claremont's X-Men was my jam, and I think I love that idea of, there are so many interesting people from all these different walks of life, from all these different cultures from around the world, and how cool would it be to get to know them, to be friends with them, to have them be your friends. And so, being able to really dig into that and really kind of broaden that further, it speaks to my ethos as a creator, which is there's always room to build a bigger table. There's always room to invite more people to this medium that we all love and are so passionate about. And so I try to approach that with every book that I do. And that's why I think I try to live and die by the log line, and why I try to inject pop culture in everything I do, is because I don't want to preach to the choir. I want converts. And I think a book like Captain Planet is a really wonderful opportunity to do all that. So to actually answer your question, for me, the Planeteers, they are meant to represent the world outside your window. And so we've done some really fun stuff to modernize all of them. So Kwame, for example, he's our team leader, and I pitched him as Cyclops meets Sam from Ted Lasso. He's a natural leader. He's got this quiet charm and resilience to him. He was a former soccer star from Ghana, whose career is derailed after he suffers a leg injury. And so he's become a farmer, and he's kind of figuring out like how, what's this new trajectory in my life? He, as you'll see in his very first scene, the threat of climate change impacts him instantly. And we will see it from the very beginning there. Wheeler is a super fun character. We have sort of recontextualized him that he's an auto worker from Detroit, because I felt like that was something that's like a really core part of this conversation, is that you need a point of view character whose arc is, why does any of this matter? Why should we be doing any of this? And why should it be people on the ground like you and me? Why can't we just turf this to somebody else? That's Wheeler's whole arc. And I feel like him being an auto worker, he's got a very complicated feeling about the environmental movement.
Absolutely.
And how that's sort of impacted his industry and has changed his industry, and sort of this question of, is it the environmentalists' fault, or is it the billionaires running the company's fault? And so he's a really interesting, fun character. And also he's kind of like classic Hawkeye a little bit, that he's like the guy who's always like taking pokes at everybody else on the team.
Nice.
He's if you like my take on Flash Thompson in Savage Avengers, you will like how we write Wheeler for sure. We have Linka, who she's really kind of done the biggest our maybe second biggest 180 out of our entire cast. In the original series, she was the very conservative Planeteer from the Soviet Union. In 19
Right.
Things have changed quite dramatically. And so for me, it was okay, like, somebody in Russia right now, like, she's really done a 180 politically. She's our most liberal member of the team. She's the one who she really believes environmentalism as a cause, as a movement, because she headlines an underground eco-activist band in the
Love it.
And she's got a little bit of wrinkles to her backstory, though, that kind of like throws a little bit of sand in the gears a little for her. But she's my favorite, I think. She's the character who, as I've written this book, continues to surprise me. She's our team scrapper. She's our Wolverine. She's our Ilyana Rasputin. And Amon just draws her so amazingly. So I think readers are going to really enjoy her. Guy, we've done a little bit of a reconfiguration for as well, in that I really wanted to lean into, in the original cartoon, she was a marine biologist. And in the original cartoon, that just meant swimming a lot. And I really wanted to have a Planeteer who understood the science of all of this. And so that's something we've really leaned into, is that she's like a science aficionado, and she loves her work, and she's kind of the kid sister of the team. She's like bubbly and like always optimistic. But what's so fascinating to me about somebody like Guy is that optimism kind of hides this like true core strength about her, that out of all the Planeteers, she knows the stakes better than anybody. And so for her, hope is kind of like a revolutionary act. It's either you stay hopeful and you try to fight for a better tomorrow, or you curl up into cynicism and despair.
Right.
And speaking of kind of more brooding characters, Mati. The reason I said Linko might be our second biggest 180 is because we have our new take on Mati. And that, I think, was the biggest. Thankfully, I've had a long time to think about it, but that would have been the biggest roadblock for me on this series, is that anyone who watched the original cartoon, Mati was often seen as the punchline. He was seen as the innocent kid brother of the team.
Heart.
The power of heart. What the hell is the power of heart? And for me, it's tactical telepathy. And so Mati is really fascinating in that, in our series, he's an indigenous person from Brazil whose people were being forced off their land to mine for mining purposes. And so he was about to fight back in a pretty bloody, violent way. And then he gets the power of heart, and it suddenly cleanses his mind of all violence and anger, and turns him into this avowed pacifist who could absolutely wreck you. He's our Batman. He's our Shang-Chi. He doesn't need to throw a punch because the ring lets him do other things. It can let him summon animals. It can let him get inside your head.
Oh, nice.
Mati's the X factor of the team. And I will say, Amon draws him like real sexy. I was not expecting like brooding hot Mati, but Amon just nailed it. And
Cool.
that kind of brings us all to our sexiest character of all, Captain Planet.
Of course.
Amon has done an amazing redesign of the character. Hot dad, bearded Captain Planet is the only I'll accept.
Yeah.
That was something that we were intentional about from the beginning, is that we really wanted to give Captain Planet a brand new redesign, knowing that like the mullet and the crop top were very much a product of 1990. And how do we kind of
bullets are still in?
It was, how do we lean into Captain Planet as this into his core concept of being this immortal elemental champion of the wilderness. So I see him very much as like Superman with metamorphose powers,
Right.
That he's this reassuring figure. He's somebody who doesn't want to, his whole mission is he doesn't want to see anybody die. And so he's able to kind of wield the elements in a slightly different, more organic way than the Planeteers. But yeah, we wanted to make it very clear that this is not a character made out of flesh and blood, that his whole body is made out of rock and stone and ice and flame. And so Amon was the one who he drew a couple passes on it, and one of them had the beard. And everybody, me, my editor Joe Ryban, everybody at Warner Brothers, we were all like, that beard, it's got to be the beard. And I think beyond sort of as like a bold design choice, in the way that like say Absolute Batman is super jacked, or Ultimate Peter Parker has his beard. I think beyond sort of planting our flag visually, I think it really does speak to Captain Planet as sort of this fatherly mentor figure. That it's a real balance in our storyline, that the spotlight really is, this is the Planeteer's story, but Captain Planet is sort of their weapon of last resort, and finding ways to kind of like keep him included in the story without him overpowering it. I like this idea that Captain Planet is sort of like Earth's dad.
Yeah, I love that.
That's awesome.
That he's looking to defend us, and that he doesn't take it personally, even when some of the people he's trying to defend are the ones that are trying to wreck the whole planet. So it's been a really fun. Oh, and actually, I forgot. There's one other character, Gaia, who we've done a nice update for as well. I wanted to establish some limits to this cast. I didn't want to give them unlimited get out of jail free cards. So Gaia was probably the biggest challenge for me. Instead of making her as like a demigoddess, who is like another Deus Ex Machina for the team to fall back on. She's a human. She's a Dalai Lama figure. It's a generational title.
That's cool.
For someone who is the spiritual vessel for the life-giving energies of our world. And I really enjoyed that, because like we're able to not only kind of put a human face on it and really speak to, I think, the core symbiosis of Captain Planet, which is it's him and human beings. But I like the fact that we've opened up the gates that like Gaia can have like a more human relationship with these Planeteers. They're similar ages, and the idea of her being kind of this middle ground, that she's human, but she's also got like her foot in this sort of almost supernatural world. I think makes for like an interesting dichotomy, and I think will make for some really interesting character dynamics for them down the road.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I think it's great that a whole new generation is going to be able to discover Captain Planet. I'm very excited to like have my kids read this book, because like I try to show them a cartoon from the 90s and they
Yeah.
care less, right? But it was such a the original show was such a it really blurred the lines between, back then it was like, you had the educational stuff on PBS and you had the more fun action stuff on regular television. Captain Planet kind of blurred the lines, where it was very educational but also very entertaining at the same time, right? It was that edutainment, as they call it. So I'm very excited for other kids to be able to discover that and learn a lot. Not just, I learned a lot about my, being, activists, but wanting to do something, wanting to go out there and fix things that were wrong. And I think right now, especially right now, is the perfect time for characters like this to exist.
Thank you.
And I think that's incredible. And I think kids are going to see this, and hopefully they're inspired to really change things, and not just for them, but for others around them.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic.
I think we live in a time where empathy is hard to come by.
Well, absolutely.
And for me, I think that's kind of the core thing that I'm trying to do with this book. Is there are other smarter writers than me who are really able to, I think, dive into the politics of a story. And for me, I'm very aware of my position that, I'm a straight white guy. I'm Jewish, but that means I pass,
Right.
And so for me, my goal is to just how can I build a bigger table, and how can I write a story that reminds people that we're stronger together than we are apart. And that you don't have to distrust somebody because they come from a different walk of life, that we have more in common than we have differences. And that's something that I've wanted to do in my work. And this is sort of, I think, the best opportunity I have to do that. And I know I'm not gonna, I'm not curing cancer here. I don't think anyone
Right.
read Captain Planet and change their whole life, but I do think that, especially in my position as a comics writer, my sphere of influence is incremental. It's not the big swings. It's the gradual push. And so I think having a book that we can, platform diverse characters and have in every story, we're able to kind of say, oh, hey, like this is, environmentalism. I get it. It's not sexy in the real world. But like
But it's important.
it affects us. I live in Los Angeles. We just had our wildfires. I was in New York during Hurricane Sandy. My parents live in the Midwest. They have record temperatures. This is a disaster movie that we're all extras in.
Right.
And so I was surprised. Dynamite and I we spoke about this book shortly after New York Comic Con last year. They made me a pitch offer, and I turned in my outline the week before the election, and I got greenlit. I think it was a day or so after the election, and then we announced the book the day after the inauguration. And seeing the response to it has been so overwhelming. And it's like I said before, this book feels timelier by the second, not always in the most comfortable way. But I do think that these are the characters, these are the heroes of the moment. And I think Captain Planet has been so overlooked for so long, but there are a lot of people out there who, if you said that a Captain Planet villain did this, I wouldn't feel too far afield. And so I
Not
do
at
think
all.
that I certainly feel like in the world's most twisted way, this is a right place, right time kind of book.
Yeah.
And Amon and I are really putting our hearts and all four other elements into this one to really make sure that we live up to this book's potential.
Absolutely.
I really was super curious about, like, I mean, you've explained kind of everything. I was curious if this was going to be like an X-Men 97 deal where you're just picking up, or if it's a reboot.
This is a reboot.
Clearly awesome,
So,
by the way.
Similar to my run on Space Ghost. If anyone is watching and likes what I do on Space Ghost, I think you're going to dig this book. This is brand new continuity, so you don't have to have watched the original cartoon in order to appreciate what we're doing here. But if you are a diehard fan, like I said, we're going to have all the classic characters. We're going to have a bunch of the classic villains. So there's going to be lots of stuff for you to enjoy. But yeah, I think I didn't want to dig too much into past continuity, or at least not do the direct reference to it, just because I want these books to be like super accessible. I know there are differing opinions on these licensed revival books, but I really subscribe to like what Daniel Warren Johnson did on Transformers, where like, you don't have to have read anything. Like, we will kind of unspool the whole thing for you, and anything you need to know, all you got to do is pick up issue 1. And so, and I think for me as a writer, that offers a lot of freedom. And that way I'm not handcuffed to like, right. Oh, well, in season 6 of Captain Planet, they did this thing. Right. It really is the best of both worlds, where I'm able to cherry pick from these bits of continuity, and saying, okay, like a character like Loot and Plunder, who's our big villain of this origin storyline. It's easy to kind of recast him as sort of an Elon Musk ruthless billionaire figure by the name of Lucian right. Plunder, and sort of the Loot and Plunder is just what all the protesters call him, or our take. Yeah, Argos Bleak, where he's sort of like an Eric Prince Blackwater kind of private mercenary type, or Duke Nukem, where Amon Casalos just showed me his new design on that. It's so killer. It's so good. How do we take a character like that, who is so fantastical in the original cartoon, and how do we maintain that elevated spirit, but also just something that could be a little more plausible in today's world? so yeah, doing all these things, it's been such a treat. I'm a big believer for a lot of these. If any of these properties have this kind of staying power, like Captain Planet or like Space Ghost or like Speed Racer, clearly the bones are there for some like really good, relevant storytelling using today's storytelling sensibilities. And so I feel so privileged to be able to be the guy who gets to write these things. And these books, surprisingly, no one's more surprised than me. They've been the most fun books of my whole career, and I think it's the level of freedom that I'm able to get writing them, that I'm able to take all these amazing lessons that I've picked up, in my creator-owned work and my Marvel work, and really kind of taking all the best of both worlds and putting them into this kind of book.
David, I just met you. This is the first time meeting you. I haven't read a single page of this. Obviously, it doesn't come out till like next month.
Yeah.
I can't think of a better writer who would be like a better fit for Captain Planet. I'm so excited to read this. Like, I love that you're treating this with so much reverence. And, like, I think this is going to be like, fast forward a few years, and this is the thing that people refer to when they think of Captain Planet over the cartoon. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, dude, you've got to read the Dynamite comic. Like, I'm so excited, and we're the ones who are privileged to have you writing this. So thank you to hear all of this. I'm so excited.
Oh, absolutely. Just from Space Ghost or what Spencer and Locke. I mean, this just tells us we're in store for something good here.
You've been there from the beginning, so I appreciate you. No, it's very kind of you guys. For me, this is my astronaut job. I always say I've tried every stable job. I can't say I was necessarily great at them. This is like, comics was like the first job that I ever did that I was like, maybe I have the potential of being decent at this. And so for me, I'm aware every day, like even the hard days, there's never a bad day, I think for me, it's constantly, I spend a lot of time thinking about like, how do I refine this process, and what's the big picture here, and what kind of control or influence do I have given my limited amount of control and influence. But I think that overthinking tendency, it really pays off for a book like Captain Planet, where my secret for books like these is that I'm more drawn towards characters that I see with potential. That's my secret, is it's much easier for me to write those books than if I wrote a short with Spider-Man, and that was like the most terrifying thing I'd ever done. Because that guy's my hero. But I think to have that slight degree of separation, to love a character for knowing what they're capable of, for knowing that like that untapped potential, that's the most fun. Those are the assignments I really gravitate towards. And that's why, like, I've got a list of pitches in my back pocket for if the time ever comes. And I think these books, by virtue of them being underestimated, I don't know, I feel a little bit of a kinship there. I love being underestimated. It means that it's that much easier for me to make people happy and really subvert those expectations. And so you see something like Space Ghost, you see something like Captain Planet, you see something like Speed Racer, where somebody's like, "Oh, I haven't thought about that in a while," and that's exactly what I want to hear, because I plan on changing all that for you.
I love that. Speaking, I've told you this before, but I'll say it again. I love Spencer and Locke. It's one of my favorite comic series of all time. Not just one of your favorite, my favorite of yours, but I just love it. Any more chance of any more Spencer or Locke?
Yeah, so the full disclosure is, we got to get the rights back to that.
Oh, okay.
I without sort of going too deep into it, but I think you and your viewers deserve to know. We've had issues with Action Lab, the publisher in that book. We haven't been paid in a long time.
Gotcha.
There's money that they have misspent, that is owed me and my creator, George Santiago Jr.
Yeah,
And
George is great.
we have attempted to sue for the rights back. We're sort of regrouping a little bit, since that suit was tossed, purely on a technicality basis and not based on the merits of the actual case itself.
Mm.
It was just the judge saying that like this shouldn't be a class action suit because of the varying contracts. And so for me, and George and I were in lockstep on this one. We would love to do a volume 3.
Yeah.
We need the rights back. Unfortunately, Action Lab and the publisher have proven to be obstinate, perhaps even spiteful, in terms of holding on to those rights, despite the fact that the publisher doesn't really exist anymore. And so I would love to do a 3rd volume. We have plans. We just have to get those rights back, and so we're we're figuring out our options on that front. But given the workload that I'm doing, making sure that that everything comes out at the level of quality that I need it to. There's no plans at the moment, but I truly hope that changes because yes, we've had a 3rd volume planned for a long time, and unfortunately, COVID kind of delayed everything, and then Action Lab not paying us delayed it even further.
Understandable. Well, thank you for being honest with us and telling us that. We really appreciate that. So just real quick before we go, I just have a quick question. Speed Racer.
Yeah.
Hello, Speed Racer with a passion. I'm also a passionate fan of the Wachowski adaptation of Speed Racer. Sure. I think it's great. I think it's a lot of fun. What was that kind of like working on Speed Racer? Something that had been around, obviously, like Space Ghost. You had Space Ghost. Yeah. Speed Racer. Was Speed Racer something that you were going after, or was it something that just kind of happened?
Well, so the way that wound up happening, it was I've done work with Mad Cave Studios for a little while now. Mm-hmm. I did my book with Alex Cormack, The Devil That Wears My Face. If you haven't checked that out.
Oh, Devil That Wears My Face.
I love that book.
Devil That Wears My Face, guys. It's incredible. It's great.
That one flew under the radar a bit, and I do regret that. But I had such a good time working on that book and working with Alex and working with folks at Mad Cave. And so Chaz Pangburn, an editor over at Mad Cave, he and I have talked for a while since then about doing more work. And he's brought up other licenses for me in the past, and either based on like my schedule or I wasn't familiar with the license, or like it didn't, maybe it just didn't quite click with me. We hadn't found anything. And at San Diego Comic-Con last year, I was doing a Devil That Wears My Face signing with the Mad Cave booth. And Chaz pulls me aside. He goes, listen, so we've been working with Tatsunoko Productions on Gotcha Man, and it's been very successful for us. And so we haven't announced this yet, but we're going to get the rights to Speed Racer.
Oh, and that's so cool.
Would you be interested? And you might know this having read my work. I love car chases. I love seeing how you can do a genre or a type of sequence that is so rooted in movement in a static medium like comics. And you see the best of them. You see Tradd Moore on Ghost Rider. You see David Aja on Hawkeye. George Santiago Jr. on Spencer and Locke did an amazing car chase and then motorcycle chase in the 2nd volume. I love fitting those in wherever I can. And I did it with a little bit in Scout's Honor, a little bit in the OZ. The Devil Wears My Face has a big carriage chase sequence. And so the idea of, and that Mad Cave offered me a long runway, 16 issues, that includes the free comic.
Wow.
Nice.
So I was like, oh, okay, like 16 installments of car chases, that rules. Yes.
Yeah.
That. So, I that really that felt like one of those offers that like you can't turn down. It's a sports comic in an industry that often isn't supportive of those, but I think the Speed Racer name, the cultural cachet, that and having a publisher that is generous with the runway as Mad Cave and is supportive with the runway, means we can go the distance and we can tell a really cool long form story. Yeah. Similar to Space Ghost, it's brand new continuity, so you don't have to have watched the show. We will introduce all the just about every viable character piecemeal, so you don't we've got cool twists on all of them, and it's going to be done primarily in Done in 1 and Done in 2 stories. So they're very easy to jump in if you've missed anything. It's very easy for retailers, if you're watching, to kind of hand sell these books. I'm working with artist David Tinto on the book.
Nice.
He is sensational. You might know him from his work on Ultraman over at Marvel.
Mhm.
You might know him also for his Commanders in Crisis with Steve Orlando. He and I worked together on a chapter of Avengers Unlimited a few years back. And,
Nice.
I've been a big fan of his work, and we reconnected at New York Comic Con, and I mentioned that I was working on Speed Racer, and he seemed very interested. So as we were staffing this project, I mentioned it to my editor Chaz. I said, David is really sensational, and I think he'd be a great fit for this book.
Yeah.
What do you think? And so, yeah, I'm really happy with how it's coming together. We're still in the very early stages
Right.
of that book. We've just wrapped up production on our Free Comic Book Day issue. I'm diving into now like the main series right now. I'm actually working on a Speed Racer script before I hopped on this podcast.
Oh, cool.
So I'm immediately in the headspace of that. And it's been a really fun book. These characters are so interesting, and it's funny. When I started my career, I was doing street level characters. People who they didn't really have a superpower, so to speak. And then I graduated to superheroes, and I love doing superheroes. But there's something really refreshing about going back and writing characters that are just ordinary flesh and blood humans.
Love that.
It's been really freeing in a certain way. I'm writing Speed's first meeting with Trixie right now. Actually. And I'm shocked at first how natural it feels, but how much fun I'm having. And so being able to like tell these really human, compelling stories, but also kind of this high octane car chase elements, and working with somebody like David, it's like it's going to look good.
Yeah.
So I can tell you, our Free Comic Book Day issue, I am so proud of it. And I think if that's any indication of how the rest of the series is going to go, I think you guys are going to be really, really stoked about this book.
Dude, doing a lot of really cool stuff, David. Really can't wait to see it all. Captain Planet comes out next month, correct?
Yes, April 23rd, the day after Earth Day.
Awesome.
Oh, sweet.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
So David, where can people find you and your work and all that fun stuff on social media and all that?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram at Pepose D. It's my last name and first initial. David Pepose Comics on Facebook. You can visit my website, davidpepose.com, or subscribe to my newsletter, Pep Talks, at bit.ly/pepnews.
Awesome.
I just gave you a follow on Instagram right now. So
I'm really bad at Instagram, so anyone who's following me, I'm sure I'll find you in like a few weeks or months. Yes, no, thank you guys so much for having me. And for anyone watching, call your local comic shop. You can ask them to add Space Ghost, Speed Racer, Captain Planet, Cable, Love, and Chrome. They can add all these things to your pull list. It'll keep my puppy fed and kibble. And
We love it.
But yes, no, and thank you guys for supporting my work all these years. You guys were there from the beginning.
Absolutely,
it means the world to continue to have your support, and I'm going to work my butt off to make sure that we earn it.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. We're excited to see what's in the future. Well, thank you for checking out the show, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We really, really appreciate you all too, watching and checking us out. As usual, check out Pastrami Nation on all the socials. You can also find me, Kevin Hoskinson, or Kevin_Hoskinson on all the socials as well. I also do have a Blue Sky now as well. And Jason, they can find you on MySpace and Friendster.
MySpace, Napster.
Yeah, Napster. And Christian, where can they find you?
All the normal socials, Christian Nacorda, you'll find me. Let's draw.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Thank you so much for joining us again, everyone. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you all next time on the Pastrami Nation podcast. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.